Good morning, sixth graders. Hope everybody is doing great today. Happy Wednesday. Today we are going to continue to learn about Mesopotamian empires, or the Mesopotamian Empire, as well as continue to edit our narrative. Your your Sumerian brochure should be turned in today. All right, so let's get started. Okay, that's not okay. Whoops. All right, there are the school announcements today. We're having a canned food drive. There's also a book fair going on right now, and the IB trait of the month is open-minded. All right, and then if you go into the slide deck, you can click on any of those to get more information. Our book talk today is related to yesterday's. It is called Rebound by Kwame Alexander. And so the crossover is about the twins, Josh and Jordan Bell. And the crossover is kind of like, Rebound is kind of like a prequel to that. And it's about their dad and his experience. It's really, really good. Like the original crossover, it's written in verse. So it's a novel in verse, which is just a great way to get into reading if you're having trouble with that at all, just because the words, there's fewer words on a page. They are so carefully chosen. It's beautifully written. And if you like basketball or novels in verse, or even not, this would be a great book for you. I highly recommend it. Okay. So again, that's Rebound by Kwame Alexander. All right, looking at our chart for today, our weekly planner. Today's Wednesday. So yesterday we worked on hooks a little bit. Today we're going to work on the IRR, the incident, response, and reflection. And we mostly learned about this when we read the story Superpowers in your Springboard book. But it's a pretty common component in personal narratives where there's something happens, the author responds to it and learns a lesson afterwards. That's the reflection. Okay, so today we're going to kind of go through our personal narratives and make sure that the IRR is present. Okay, so we're continuing to edit and revise your personal narrative. Now that you've completed the planning, pre-writing, and drafting stages, we will now focus on editing and revising. So, does your writing contain an IRR? Personal narratives usually include a significant incident and a writer's response to the incident, a reflection, and then a reflection on the meaning of the incident, what it taught them. So you want to make sure that your story has that. So you want to make sure it's clear so that when I read it, even though I wasn't there for your personal narrative and what happened in your life, you have a clear incident. The response and reflection are also clear. Okay, so the incident should take place in the beginning. Okay, probably after introducing the setting characters, conflict, and main event. And it can be part of the conflict or main event. Then the response is in the middle or kind of middle end. How did you respond to the conflict or main event? And include lots of details. That's also part of the main thing that happened. And then lastly, you're going to talk about your reflection. What did you learn or realize? Okay, so, and then also in your paper, you are going to highlight the incident, response, and reflection so that when I go and check in with you guys today, and if I'm looking through Otis and looking at your papers, that I can clearly see that. Okay, so that is what you are doing in language arts today. I'll probably go through your papers later this afternoon, and that way I can let you know if there are people who did not get that done to remind them to do that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pause right now. Okay, so because that was one part of our lesson today, but really it should have been something that was already included. You just might need to make it more clear. But we have a second mini lesson today, and that is just making your writing more descriptive and detailed and come alive a little bit more. So if you want to pause and work on your IRR, now is a good time to do that. All right. Okay, and now adding voice with similes and metaphors. We've also learned about similes and metaphors. So we're going to think about adding those into our paper to make it more interesting and descriptive. So similes and metaphors are a great way to paint a picture for your reader. Is there somewhere in your narrative where you can add similes and metaphors to make your writing stronger? Okay, and I want you to do this, but I want you to do it carefully because I don't want you to add in a bunch of similes and metaphors just to do it, and maybe it makes your writing even worse. You have to thoughtfully put them in where it goes along with the flow of your story. So remember, a simile compares two things using the words like or as. So she swam like a fish. And then a metaphor compares two things by saying one is the other. It's pretty much the same as a simile, but you're saying one thing is the other. You do not use like or as. So my jacket was a green, ugly brother. And I'm sure you guys probably remember that from the jacket because it is such a great metaphor and it just really gives a good image in the reader's mind. Okay, so now you're going to go back to your narrative and add some similes and metaphors. Highlight them in blue. Okay, and hopefully if you have it, like just highlight your IRR. It didn't say in yellow, but do that in yellow. And I'm going to go switch that right now. Because I want to make sure that you don't get mixed up between your similes and metaphors and then your IRR. I'll say to do this one in yellow. Oh. Okay. Oh my gosh. It's hard to type when I'm recording. All right. So that's that. So you're going to highlight any similes and metaphors in blue. Okay. So that is it for for language arts today. So if you want to push pause on this video again and go ahead and work on your story, go ahead and do that. And you can even do social studies in the afternoon during our independent time. Okay, so moving on, we are here. We are going to continue with the Mesopotamia Empire slideshow. And then today you'll be reading pages 52 and 53 in your textbook. That's only 2 pages. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the Assyrian Empire. How did the Assyrians influence Southwest Asia? Okay, so we're going to watch this video. Okay. And it's 5 minutes long. And I feel like
before the sun never set on the British Empire, before Genghis Khan swept the steppe, before Rome extended its influence to encircle the Mediterranean Sea, there was ancient Assyria. Considered by historians to be the first true empire, Assyria's innovations laid the groundwork for every superpower that's followed. At its height, in the 7th century BCE, the Assyrian Empire stretched across modern Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and parts of Turkey, Iran, and Egypt. Its wonders included a vast library and large botanical and zoological park. But the story of Assyria's rise to dominance began many centuries earlier, in the late Bronze Age, in a city called Ashur. Ashur was a tin and textiles trading center located along the Tigris River in northern Iraq. It shared its name with a god thought to be an embodiment of the city and later of the entire empire. For the administration-minded Assyrians, politics and religion were closely linked. Around 1300 BCE, a high priest named Ashur-ubillit I took the title of king and initiated a tradition of military campaigns, effectively transforming Assyria from a city-state to a territorial state. This meant that a single administrative entity oversaw many places, cultures, and peoples. For the next 150 years, Assyria extended its reach and thrived. In the 12th century BCE, a mysterious catastrophe that still bewilders archaeologists caused the Assyrians to lose much of their territory. A few hundred years later, however, Assyrian kings began a new round of conquests. This time, they honed their administrative system into an empire that would last generations. Assyrians were military innovators and merciless conquerors. During their conquests, they used siege tactics and cruel punishments for those who opposed them, including impalement and flaying. The growth of their empire was due in part to their strategy of deporting local populations, then shifting them around the empire to fulfill different needs. This broke people's bonds with their homelands and severed loyalties among local groups. Once the Assyrians conquered an area, they built cities connected by well-maintained royal roads. Often, when a new king came to power, he would build a new capital. With each move, new palaces and temples were erected and lavishly decorated. Although kings claimed absolute power, we know that an extensive system of courtiers, provincial officials, and scholars influenced affairs. At least one woman, Samaramat, ruled the kingdom. Assyrian rulers celebrated their military excursions by having representations of their exploits carved into the walls of their newly built palaces. But despite the picture of a ruthless war state projected by these records, the Assyrian kings were also interested in the cultural traditions of the region, especially those of Babylonia, a separate state to the south. Babylonia had been a cultural leader for millennia, stretching back to the beginning of writing at the end of the 4th millennium BCE. Assyria saw itself as the inheritor and protector of this tradition. Assyrian rulers supported scholars in specialities ranging from medicine to magic, and the capital cities, like Nineveh, were home to elaborate parks and gardens that housed plants and animals from around the empire. One of Assyria's final rulers, Ashurbanipal, sent scholars throughout Babylonia to gather up and copy ancient literary works. Ashurbanipal's library took the form of clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform in the languages of Akkadian and Sumerian. The library was lost during the final sack of Nineveh in 612 BCE, but thanks to a 19th century archaeological excavation, many masterpieces of ancient literature, including the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Babylonian creation epic, survive today. After centuries of rule, the Assyrian Empire fell to the Babylonians and Medes between 612 and 609 BCE. Yet the innovations that the Assyrians pioneered live on. Their emphasis on constant innovation, efficient administration, and excellent infrastructure set the standard for every empire that's followed them in the region and across the globe. Are there certain things that all empires have in common? Across cultures and continents, what themes keep resurfacing? Watch this playlist to draw your own conclusions, or post your theories in the comments.
All right. So that is super interesting to me, just how people lived so long ago and how much in common we still have with them. And don't, in some ways. Okay, so the Assyrians built a powerful military to conquer new lands and defend their empire. And we saw that in the video and about how cruel they could be and hardcore and about how they move people around so that people wouldn't become too loyal to their area and stuff. I thought that was really interesting. And then another vocabulary word for us is the tribute, and that's forced payments from conquered people. And I don't know about you guys, but when I first read that, it totally reminded me of the Hunger Games and how the Hunger Games districts are forced to send a boy and girl tribute every year to the Hunger Games because the districts had been conquered by the capital. So those are their forced payments, and they're called tributes. Kind of creepy, but interesting. Okay, another word, we still use this word in certain parts of the world, like in Canada, instead of having states like we do here, they have something called provinces, which are political districts. Okay, so kind of like a state. But the king had people govern these large areas to collect taxes and carry out the laws. So they are all part of Assyria, but they were like little different areas. Okay, and so that is our lesson for today. For following up on this stuff, make sure that we're not doing any work with this, make sure that you're taking notes as usual as we go through the slideshows, but also, and do your reading, make sure that your brochure is finished. So that's your kind of extra work for social studies today, your independent work, if that is not done. If it is done, then you have a little extra time. Okay, so have an amazing day. I will see you guys on tomorrow. Bye.